All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for another exciting episode of the Broadband Hui. This is 201. I'm glad we got to cap off the 200th with a very memorable episode, and the link is available on the agenda. So feel free to check it out if you weren't able to join us. Uh, this is the Broadband Hui. Glad to see everybody here. We'll start off with some quick introductions, and then we can get into the agenda. I'm going to start off by introducing myself. My name is Bert Lum. I'm the State Digital Equity Coordinator here in DBED, Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. And our office is called the Hawaii Broadband and Digital Equity Office. We've been doing this Broadband Hui call since March of 2020. So everybody who's been on, it's been kind of like a educational journey as we move down the timeline, and now as we move from planning into implementation. So it's an exciting time to be a part of this. So HBDO co-convenes the Broadband Hui along with the County of Hawaii, and I'll give it over to Shola and Riley.
Hello, Nui. Good morning, everybody. I'm Shola Kahiapo-Trevino, and I'm the Digital Equity Specialist here at the County of Hawaii, the Department of Research and Development. Mahalo nui for always letting me come and co. And I will pass it over to Riley.
Aloha, Riley Saito, Research and Development Department at the County of Hawaii. I'm the Energy Infrastructure Specialist and allowed to play in the Digital Equity Sandbox.
Allowed to play. We'll welcome you. We welcome you to play in the sandbox. Okay, and I see people putting their contact in or their name and affiliation in the chat, which is good. It gives us a chance to kind of refresh our memory as to who all is on the call. We'll do some quick, new people introductions, and Shola, why don't you go ahead and see if you can call on anybody that's new. But all regulars already, yeah?
There's a few. There's John Kaohe Laulii. If you want to introduce yourself.
Okay, aloha, my name is John Kaohe Laulii, calling in from the island of Kauai on the Anahola Hawaiian Homelands, and I think it's my second meeting here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. We met John when we were over there with Nate and doing some of the community, info sessions. So great to see you again, John. Who else you want to call on? Shola? You want to call on Jerry Isdale?
Yeah.
Aloha, Jerry Isdale from Maui. Just getting up and getting going. I'm going to turn my video off so you don't have to look at the bedhead and all that. Interested to hear how things are going. It's been a little bit since I've been out on one of these calls with y'all.
Well, good to have you back, Jerry. I think the iPhone J Hawaii is Jill over at Hawaii Literacy, so you don't have to call on her. Who else? How about Frederick? Mariels?
Hey Bert, this is I think maybe the third or fourth time that I've been on this call, but I've been spotty across the years, but Frederick from Fair Suite again. Yeah, happy to be here and learning more about what we've been doing. So happy to be here.
Great. I need to refresh my memory. So thanks for refreshing my memory. Okay, Shola, who else?
And everyone else seems pretty regular here.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Move on.
Go ahead and get started.
All right.
What's on the manao of the day?
All right, our Mana'o of the day is very helo-centric because we are in the best time of the year, which is Merry Monarch. Today is nice and rainy and cool in Hilo. The Mana'o Okala is Naniu Ulu Aua o Moku'ola, and it refers to the tall, slim coconut trees on Moku'ola, which is the island right in Hilo Bay. So when you're coming in from the airplanes, you can always see Moku'ola from the top. And I don't know, just giving honor to the space that we are having all of our visitors coming in this week, and the momentous occasion that Merry Monarch is in Hilo. So mahalo.
Yeah, well, it's a great time for Hawaiian culture, and what Merry Monarch was recognized as what the largest or the best hula event
It
in
was
the
like the
world.
best cultural event.
Yeah, no, that's great. And of course, I think a lot of a lot of attention is going to be focused on Merry Monarch for the next three or 4 days. All right, okay. So let's see. What do we want to jump into right now? I'm gonna just go over to our Broadband Hui website, and let me go ahead and share my screen. I just wanted to make sure everybody got a chance to check this out. Share screen here. Okay. So, I really actually thought that last week's Broadband Hui call was really quite good, and it was a combination of celebratory as well as people expressing their concerns and interests, and I think we've always tried to create an environment for the free flow of information and the sharing of your thoughts about various topics, and I think that was well represented last on the 200. I did early on in the Broadband Hui's history put together a code of conduct that I'd like to just reintroduce, and if you want to kind of read it and see where we're coming from, I think this is a good place to refresh our memory about what our code of conduct is. And primarily, we want to create a safe and respectful environment for all participants. Oh, and before I get into the each item, I was part of Code for America back when we had quite a bit of involvement with Code for Hawaii and civic engagement, and this was something that they had put together for basically conduct on Code for America and Code for Hawaii activities. And I thought it was a good place to reference and draw from. And since I see Shauna on the call, I also saw very much similarities with NDIA's code of conduct. So rather than just create something from scratch, there's a lot of good examples out there. So code of conduct, safe and respectful environment for all participants, a place where people are free to fully express their identities, presume the value of others. Everybody's ideas, skills, contributions have value. Don't assume everybody has the same context. And I think, many of you have been on the calls for know the history. So, I think there's importance in context, and maybe some of the new folks might, it's a lot of it might be kind of new to them. Find a way for people to be productive with their skills, encourage members and participants to listen as much as they speak, strive to build tools that are open and free technology for public use. This is more of a civic engagement activity. Prioritize access for and input from those who are traditionally excluded from the civic process. Work to ensure that the community is well represented in the planning, design, and implementation of civic tech. Actively involve community groups and those with subject matter expertise in the decision-making process. Ensure that the relationship and conversations between community members and the local, state, and federal government staff and community partners remain respectful, participatory, and productive. Provide an environment where people are free from discrimination or harassment. So again, I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention and bring some focus to what it is that we're all about. So I wanted to reintroduce this to everybody, and that is our code of conduct. It is on the I put it on the agenda. It's part of our web page, the broadband.hawaii.gov/broadband-hui. So if you're interested in checking that out, that's where it's at. Okay, so with that, from a context standpoint, last week we had some pretty major announcements. One of which obviously was the acceptance of the digital equity plan, and many of the states got their digital equity plan accepted by the NTIA last week. Started on Tuesday. We got Angie and Jack, our FPO, to help with the announcement, and what was announced shortly thereafter, which was quite a surprise. We thought it might be on a future date, but on Friday morning, on Good Friday, NTIA announced the notice of funding opportunity, which is basically I would consider kind of the Bible, the rules of engagement for the digital equity capacity grant. So that was shared quite widely, even though it was Good Friday, and I saw the email come in early in the morning from Angie from NTIA, and so I then consequently kind of shared it out to everybody on the Broadband Hui. And so I'm hoping that maybe over the 3-day weekend, you folks were able to kind of check it out and read it. But I do want to sort of bring some attention to where, at least from a community standpoint, what we would be looking for as we move into this implementation of the digital equity capacity grant period. So before I sort of start into that, any questions? Is somebody saying something? Shola, did you exercise your
I exercised my right. Yes, I did. Okay.
Okay, very good. Okay. So on the agenda, which I pretty sure Riley, you probably dropped the agenda in the chat. There are links to the notice of funding opportunity, and one of the things that I want to highlight. Let's see, maybe I should bring up the Benton Institute. It might take me a little while to find it, but well, maybe I can just pull it up here. I just want to highlight some things in the notice of funding opportunity, and the folks over at Benton did a good summary of what is included in the notice of funding opportunity, but I don't have the link readily available, so I didn't want to take up time kind of searching for it. But I do want to advise people on the call today that if you are interested in taking a look at putting a project together for potential digital equity capacity grant consideration, I think it's highly advisable that you not only read the digital equity plan that we are now proudly, has it proudly accepted by the NTIA, but you also read the notice of funding opportunity. And the pages that I would highly recommend that you take a look at is from page 27, and I'll touch on some of the topics there. Donna, thanks for posting the link there in the chat. Let's see, and if you folks are able to pull that up, maybe I'll use that as a reference document to share, because it has some important information in a fairly summarized manner. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And we'll sort of just kind of quickly go through some of these items. So this is the NTIA, or the Benton Institute, sort of summarization of the items that are in the digital equity capacity grants. And some of this introduction, it is really the way to implement the state's digital equity plan. It allows us to make sub-grants to implement the plan. And there's actual, I guess, monies in the overall grant for evaluation of the projects as it moves along the timeline. And there's administrative costs associated with administering, some of these grants. The thing that I want to kind of focus in on is that the NTIA, in looking at funding these digital equity capacity grants, is that it really addresses the needs of the covered populations. And I don't have to go into detail as to, well, I'll just say that it's low-income housing for households. You have kupuna, 60 or above, incarcerated individuals, veterans, people with disabilities, people with language barriers, members of ethnic or racial minorities, and people who live in rural areas. This is really important because covered populations are the key focus of the digital equity plan. And so consequently, the digital equity capacity grants need to focus on these covered populations. It has long-lasting and meaningful change, measurable implementation strategies. So any project that gets proposed needs to have these measurable objectives, and it'll be evaluated based on those meeting those measurable objectives. And of course, we've been doing stakeholder engagement quite actively as a result of the Broadband Hui, but that is also pointed out as a priority for the digital equity capacity grant. From a funding standpoint, Hawaii on this initial tranche of money got $6 million. So that is what we are looking at, helping to fund a variety of projects, during this first NOFO for the digital equity capacity grant. We expect 2 additional NOFOs in subsequent years, 2025 and 2026. But right now we're working with what was provided in this first NOFO, which is $6 million. Here's how it breaks down, and here's Hawaii's 6 million and some change. And this is basically formula based. Okay. We, HBDO, will be submitting an application for the release of that 6 million. We're not going to get it all at once. It'll be based on the projects that are outlined and articulated in our application. Our application will be evaluated based on the number of covered populations served, the number of people served within each population, the total number of people served, number of programs implemented by type, anecdotal testimony demonstrating the positive impact of the program, quantifiable evidence of progress toward the measurable objectives, and impact on the state's goals regarding economic, workforce development, educational outcomes, health outcomes, civic and social engagement, and delivery of essential services. So that's what we're going to be looking to highlight in our application. And this is information that the NTIA is going to be requiring us to collect, as key data points, moving forward. Okay, this is important. Timeline. We have a very short window to submit our application. And so our application will be submitted before May 28th. And we're looking at the calendar. May 28th is like a Tuesday. And I think there might be a holiday on Monday. So we may be looking at getting it in, or at least getting it to our approvers, within state government the week before. So that puts a very, very tight timeline for us to respond. Again, we only have 2 months, 60 days, and that's a statutory requirement for the Digital Equity Capacity Grant. There are some other dates which are not, don't pertain to us. The U.S. territories have until July 31st. And for people on the call who are part of Native Hawaiian organizations, there is another section in the notice of funding opportunity, and I would advise those Native Hawaiian organizations to take a look at Section 3 in the notice of funding. There's a deadline of September 25th, so it's a little further out, but it's an opportunity to apply for a competitive grant allocation that other Native American as well as Native Alaskan organizations are going to also be applying for. So that's also written into the notice of funding opportunity. So that's in a nutshell, the things that I wanted to kind of point out, and am happy to maybe answer some questions at this stage. It's still early in the process, but I wanted to bring this opportunity to all of your attention, because although it is early, the timeline is so short that it will soon become the deadline, I think, will start to loom in our horizon very, very shortly. So I wanted to share that with you. And if you have any sort of preliminary sort of questions, feel free to bring them up. It is a bit of an evolving process, so bear with us as we get more detail, as we move along this timeline. Chung?
Thanks, Bert. I just wanted to add just a couple of comments. One is that because there's this reporting requirement for us, so the projects that you are all thinking of doing needs to align with the state digital equity plan, because we are going to collect data from you if you are getting funding from the capacity grant, so that it rolls up to the aggregated data that we're going to have to report to NTIA. So the alignment is very important. And then we're going to help you shape your project so that is alignment. So if you go look at the digital equity plan, there are there's some suggestions on the types of projects, types of tasks that that we recommend. So there are two things that we have to kind of balance, right? Meeting the requirements set by NTIA, but also making sure that what's delivered for our communities are really the things that are needed. So there's that balance. So as you shape your projects, please have conversations with us so that we can help. If not directly with us, we can reach out to NTIA to help us, with trying to figure out what the eligible projects are. Again, please look at, before you start figuring out what projects, look at the digital equity plan, look at the types of projects there are in the strategies, and what kind of data that we're going to be looking at collecting. So all of that information is in the digital equity plan. So please read that first, and then reach out to us to help you, anytime. Thanks, Bert.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chung. And I'm super glad that you're bringing some of the details up. Really important. What Chung just said is that if you have projects that you want to start sharing with us, and contact any of us on the team. So Chung, myself, Amber, Kara, and we will schedule something so that we can help make sure that it's framed properly. And what the framing will help us do is included in our project narrative, which we will then have to submit by this May 28th deadline. So again, get in touch with us so that we can start to kind of frame it up in a way that we can include it in our application. And the goal here is to hit that, well, actually exceed that $6 million mark, so that we have a good list and idea of the projects across the state, and start to make sure that we can not only fund those but also be have a running list that potentially, if it doesn't get funded in the first year, we can be ready to look at follow-on NOFOs in 2025 and 2026. So this process is definitely going to start, and we want to encourage you to schedule something with us, and we can start to get into some of the details as to what we're looking for from a project standpoint. Hey, Chrissy.
Aloha, I have a quick question. So I see that there are 3 different, I don't know if they're buckets, but one is, we're talking about the Digital Equity Capacity Grant Program, and then there's a Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program, and that one on the Broadband USA website, it says coming soon. What is the difference between those two? We're talking about the capacity grant right now, right? That was released. We know that what monies are allocated for that. And then what is the other one?
That's a really good question. So when the NTIA provided, I guess, programmatic funds for digital equity, there were 3 main programs. One is and it's all kind of under the umbrella called the Digital Equity Act. The first one was a Digital Equity Plan, which we got funded for $570,000 to create the plan. And that's the plan that is now available, that was approved by NTIA last week, Tuesday. That led to the capacity grants, which we as the state will be administering. So it's a formula base, and every state got a certain amount of money, and the NTIA will then, post our application, award that amount to us as the state, and then we will, work through how we can fund some of the projects that we just talked about. Okay, so that's the Digital Equity Capacity Grant. And then the Digital Equity Competitive Grant, which hasn't been, the NOFO hasn't come out, but it will come out shortly, and we don't know when exactly. That is a program that any, there's a list, and I can dig up the list, but there's a list of eligible entities that can apply directly to the NTIA. So this list, I just had it up here. Let me see. Oh, here it is. Okay. So the list consists of a political subdivision of the state, including an agency of the state. So, any of the state departments and subdivisions and agencies can apply. A Native American tribe, Alaska Native entity, or Native Hawaiian organization can try. They can apply. A foundation, corporation, institution, which is nonprofit, can apply. A community anchor institution can apply. The local education agency can apply. An entity that carries out workforce development programs can apply. A partnership between any of the entities described. I'm reading right off of the, it's called the USC Title 47, Chapter 16, Subchapter 8, and it's a Section 1724. A partnership between any of these entities described. So these are the organizations that can apply directly to the NTIA for digital equity competitive grant monies, right? So that's another program, and it will be announced shortly. And ours is definitely separate from that. Chrissy, does that sort of answer your question?
Yes, mahalo. Thanks for that, Bert. So much to catch up knowledge-wise, yeah. What's out there and what's available. Appreciate that.
Yeah. I know it's kind of a lot to absorb. So another thing that, again, if you have questions that I should relay to NTIA, feel free, and I will do that. What we're reflecting right now is what we know based on the notice of funding opportunity and our current state of applying as a result of dates that are being given to us. So that's what we're working through. Any other questions? I did want to point to a couple things. Oh yeah, go ahead, Riley.
What is a political subdivision?
Could be I think county.
It's a political subdivision, not government, or I don't know. This sounds weird.
Let me
Like all Democrats,
John?
all Republicans, or only independents? What's a political subdivision?
Well, Hawaii doesn't have very many, but for example, California has, in Humboldt County, the size of Maui County, we've got 7 cities, community service districts, special districts that are all considered subdivisions of the state. Anyway, just as an example, Riley.
Okay.
I guess the question I'm trying to ask, maybe I need to do my homework, but if I'm a community-based nonprofit in Hawaii, am I applying to the state for a sub-grant? Or am I applying to NTIA for a competitive grant? Or are those 2 different paths available to me?
Those are 2 different paths.
That are both opening up right now with this NOFO, or that are unfolding before us?
Well, the NOFO that we're referring to is the capacity grant. So what we're putting the word out to organizations is to start thinking about a project that could be included in our application.
So
that's
that's the
what
$6 million,
So let's, yes,
right? The formula in hand, $6 million. Through the
correct,
state.
right. And then anything subsequent to that, as it pertains to the competitive grant, will be dependent on the notice of funding opportunity that comes out, which hasn't been released yet.
Thank you. Easy to get confused. Thank you.
Oh yeah, pretty easy. But again, that's why I really appreciate the fact that everybody who participates on this call has sort of persevered through this ongoing education and discussion around what are these programs and what is it that you can participate in. And that's why our group is encouraging to schedule some time with us so that we can at least help get us all on the same page with some of this application process. Hey, Kaala.
Hey, good morning, Bert. And I think it's a question for you and Chung both. We talk about the strategies and the projects that you are outlining in the plan. Is there a sort of a sequence of projects, like train the trainer stuff, translation of digital literacy curriculum,
What I'm watching right
that kind of stuff? I was just looking at it. Was there like a priority? I know this is the overall digital equity plan is, I can't remember, is it 4 years or 3 or 4 or 5 years? And so is there like some sequence of events that you're looking for with this first tranche of the $6 million? And then probably second question would be, any way to anticipate what the next couple of rollouts or funding would be?
Okay, so I'll attempt to answer the first one, and Chung, feel free to jump in. The prioritization obviously will be based on the evaluation criteria that I just shared. So, I don't have it in front of me right now, but how many covered populations, how many individuals, how many programs. I mean, it's going to be kind of based on the scale of what it is that you can provide across the entire state. Now, I'm not saying that we're only looking at statewide projects, because we've always talked about hyperlocal and looking at projects that could get funded in communities, but we're looking at projects that enable HBDO to manage this process in a way that not only respects the process of grant management, but gives opportunity for those communities to gain some benefit from some of this funding. So it's kind of a combination of a lot of that, and there's a little bit of subjectivity into how we end up prioritizing some of the projects, but without looking at all the projects that could potentially go in this first tranche, we won't be able to answer what can we prioritize. We want to actually get more projects than the 6 million so that we can start to put a list together and start to look at what can we realistically manage, given how many people we have and and the time frame. Chung, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and I'm going to be quite frank here, and we're not quite ready to share because we're still trying to understand what the baseline is, so what's available out there, how many of the cover population folks are being served by those projects or activities. But I can tell you right now that some of the things that we're going to look for, especially on the front end of the our work, is those low-hanging fruits. What are those things that we can roll out right away and have wide community impact? So just, I'm not going to tell you in order, like, because we haven't figured that out yet, but things like wireless capability for community anchor institutions. The trying to stand up telehealth capacity individually and in the communities. Devices, making devices available, and the training that we need to provide. Those are kind of the things that I think can be addressed immediately, and that will have really immediate wide community impact. So at least personally, me, I'm thinking kind of along those lines, and those seem to be kind of the low-hanging kind of things that low-hanging fruit kind of things that we can tackle right away. So we understand that can be done rather quickly. And then there are those programs that probably need some time to, develop, have conversations, and really kind of, work out the details. So it might take a little bit more time. So then, those are projects that might come towards end of the NOFO, or perhaps into the second or the third NOFO. But just to share my thoughts, that's kind of what I'm thinking, as far as projects are concerned for this first NOFO. So just take that and
Thank you.
we can have more conversations. Yeah.
No, appreciate it.
No, yeah. Thanks, Chung. And this process that we're going through right now, and as Chung articulated in terms of the low-hanging fruit and getting the kind of an impact. I mean, we're also trying to create momentum around this whole digital equity movement as well. So, can some of these projects get that kind of attention that continues to build momentum as we move down this timeline? And those are all some of the things that will go into consideration as we kind of wrap our arms around potential projects. Hey, Dean, all the way from Washington, D.C.
Hey, thanks, Bert, and thanks, Chung. I was just thinking about, like, from the sort of federal legislative side of things. I know congressional offices can provide grant letters of support for federal grants, so I think this might be an interesting opportunity for us to sort of like weigh in our voices. At least from my side, I'll send us up the chain and see what the temperature is like. But I think this would be a good way we can contribute.
Oh yeah, thanks, Dean. When we do submit our application, I know that the application process and the grant portal allows us to include additional information in support of our application. And so I think it would be great to get, congressional letters of support in that for that purpose. Well, thanks everybody. That's great questions. And we will continue to have, a discussion around the digital equity capacity grant, as we move down the weeks. As I said earlier, we're on a pretty tight timeline. So we would encourage all of you who are thinking about a project to, get in touch with any of us, and, we'll start to schedule some time and go into some of the, maybe the details as to how we best frame up a project for inclusion, in our DE capacity grant application. Okay, well, that's what I wanted to kind of cover, and we're at the last sort of 15 minutes, and I think wanted to give some time to Kieran and Dan to give us a policy update. And I know there's some good stuff moving forward. So Kieran, you want to share with us what's going on?
Sure. Thanks, Bert. Oh, really good information you just shared, and sounds exciting. But I wanted to give the Hui an update of where HB 2359 is and what happened last week. There was a WAM JDC hearing on Thursday, March 28th. And the Hui did submit testimony as agreed upon when we met to actually take out the definition of the broadband infrastructure and the exclusion of it, and then add wireless community networks back in. As for those of you who are familiar with the legislature, many times in the money committees, as they're called, these things will push right through and move forward. And many of these substantive amendments are done in the subject matter committees, or they have to be resolved in conference. So that's exactly what happened. It did pass through, which is great news. So it passed with no amendments. But what that means is now coming upon the conference committees, which will be next, we will have to reach out to the conferees with a letter, email, and our requested amendments for their consideration. It's not the same as testimony. It is just a communication, as simple as that is. And then that decision is made among the conferees in conference. As far as timeline, the big deadline that we're hitting this week with the legislature is this Friday. It's the second decking. And so after that happens, then we'll go towards the conference committees, and the conferees are assigned. Typically, that does include the chairs of the subject matter committees, but that's the next thing, and making sure that, of course, it's scheduled in conference, which it should be, hopefully. So that's the status on HB 2359. We will see what happens in conference and go on from there. In terms of anything else happening, there is a GM 605, which is Chang's appointment, is scheduled for next week. So we'll put in something to support that, like we mentioned before. And other than that, that's all that's on the legislative front. We're getting close to the end. Any questions?
Thanks, Kieran. Yeah, so Chung's confirmation is on the 11th, right? The 11th of April. April.
Yeah.
Coming up on next week, Thursday. Yeah. So I didn't, after all my talking, I didn't realize that Jack was actually on, and I did want to give Jack a chance to say anything that he would like to say from a NTIA perspective. And Jack, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, even if you don't want to say anything, but you wanna share anything that Chung and I talked about, and maybe from an NTIA perspective, you wanna add anything to it?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bert. No worries. I'm just joining in, listening into the valuable discussion. I did add a few resources to the chat, so those of you that have seen that, please feel free to review those. The FAQs, as I think, are really useful to describe the state's plans to implement the capacity grant, as well as other pertinent questions that have come up in this discussion. So please take a look at that. You feel free to reach out to Bert and team or myself directly if you have questions about it. We'll be putting out more information as we continue to move along the capacity grant implementation timeline. So I will be learning more, and I'll be sharing it with this team via the DE team and moving along. So thanks a lot.
No, thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. Okay, now again, lots of stuff going on, lots of kind of moving parts, and I do want to thank Jack, and of course Kieran and Dan for kind of holding the fort for some of our legislative activities. So with the last I did want to mention that Maui is having their Maui Nui Digital Equity Coalition meeting today. So I think it's at noon. I'm going to jump on that for a bit and talk about the capacity grant. Dean?
Sorry, I could do after what your announcement.
No, that was it. That was it.
Oh, that was it. Oh, okay. Yeah. I just completely forgot to mention. So the deadline for congressionally directed spending requests for Hirona's office is closing this Friday. So if you guys,
Oh
if
boy.
there's anything you have cooking, I'm looking. I know Kyle, you got something cooking. So Friday is going to be, I think, the last deadline. I know we've been extending it just because of the budget situation and whatnot. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Dean, you bring up a really good point, and we HBDO will spend a fair amount of time talking about the digital equity capacity grant, but that should not reduce the importance of any other grant opportunity that you might be able to apply to. So the congressional directed spending, or what is the house call there? I forget already.
Like community something fund, or something like that.
Community project fund.
Community
Community
project
project
fund.
fund. So I would highly recommend that, you don't, and I know the nonprofits that are on the call, they don't do this, but you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You want to spread the requests for funds across multiple funding buckets, so that you have not only short-term and long-term funding requirements met, but you also should look really closely at how restrictive is the money, right? And can you seek some funds that are maybe less restrictive and allow you some flexibility? Because when you start to get into some of the more federal compliance and restrictions that might come with, let's say a digital equity capacity grant, you want to have the flexibility of doing other kind of grant programs as well, to kind of augment and have enough of a financial buffer that gets you across in the long term. So anyway, just some funding advice. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Bert. Quick question, it might be for Chung, I'm not sure. But I followed a link that Garrett had provided in the agenda to the Hawaii Broadband Working Group, which was created by statute to make reports to the legislature. And I note that they had a meeting on March 12th, and the meeting materials were really interesting to look at because they included the report to the legislature in December, which I had missed that. I don't know if other folks had a chance to look at it. Maybe this is work for the policy group after the legislative session. We can sort of pick this up and try to follow up. But in particular, what I noticed was an advisory group was formed and it was updated. And it doesn't include any consumer or public interest groups. It does have AT&T and Charter and Hawaiian Tel and others. So I just thought that might be an interesting venue for the Hui to look at participating in. And I wondered what Chung thought of that recommendation.
No, thank you for the recommendation. I'll talk to Garrett. We're always looking to improve, that advisory group, right? And so just know that the working group there's a very specific task, right? It's for the infrastructure that's being created. So so we're trying to also figure out, okay, so what happens next? So the report has been submitted. There are no statutory requirements of any reports after that. But that doesn't mean there might be some reso in the future to ask this working group to provide additional information or additional reports. But statutorily, after that report is submitted, there are no other follow-ups, for this working group. But we'll continue to meet and until we can figure out exactly, how do we go forth. I mean, there are some a measure that we're also probably will submit because we have to, do some statutory kind of kind of sorry for lack of a better word, set things up statutorily so that we can do the work past the infrastructure builds. So but no, I think that recommendation and I'll take it to Garrett and have that conversation with him. Yeah. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean. Hey, Dan, final question.
Well, interestingly, in that report, the draft legislation to create the authority to own some of these assets was not actually introduced. So that's thing, and so we'll watch that. And I missed some of the conversation, but I wondered about the kind of the outreach program of the broadband office to the nonprofits, of which there are many. Seemingly these highly local community organizations need to know to get their applications in for some of your capacity grant. Thank you.
Just to comment on,
go ahead.
The timing of that. So the timing, just to go out maybe like between now and maybe about a year. So the timing of the process is, okay, so we're working on the application and we're expected to get it in by end of May. And the earliest that the funding will come is late August. So so just looking at from a timing perspective, even with the funds in, we still are setting up a process to deploy the funds, right? So we can't just start handing out checks. We got to have a process to evaluate and to award at our level. So that probably is not going to happen until late this year or early next year. So that's the timing of it. So you don't have to submit an application to us anytime soon. I mean, we still have to get that funding, set up a process to evaluate and to award those funding. So it's not immediate done. So don't worry too much about getting an application in. And then as that time gets closer, we'll share what exactly what we would expect from an applicant or those seeking the capacity grant funding. So so don't worry about the application yet. Just worry about how you can come up with some of the projects that align with the digital equity plan.
Right, but organizations need to start thinking about what they might want and how they can contribute. And
yes,
I'm going to try to do a little kind of tests and see if who among my contacts who might be actually aware that they could do good with some money. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Well, and then it's an opportunity to leverage the contacts that the Broadband Hui has to further the communications of what we're talking about rolling out. So we're not trying to shotgun everything right now. We're leveraging the network which you are a part of to help sort of force multiply this message. And to Chung's point, there is a timeline that extends this into the end of the year, early 2025. In fact, if you look on page 28 of the NOFO, it says, if at the time of the application, a state or territory has not yet identified all the projects to be used by the digital equity plan implementation, or is unable to provide all of the project details listed below, this information must be submitted to the NTIA grants portal as soon as practicable, but no later than 9 months from the award start date. 9 months from the award start date. So, again, the award start date is the date that the NTIA recognizes our application and awards us, the digital equity capacity grant funds. There's 9 months to get details about projects into the NTIA. So again, there's some time, but yeah, we want to make sure that people on this call can share what it is that you've heard and get them involved. Let me know. I can include them on the next Hui call, and we'll share this information out again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Just
Thanks, John.
one more comment, we are super excited, just as you folks are. We're gonna do our best to get the money in as at the earliest point possible and deploy these funds for, projects as early as we can. So we're super excited, and that's a commitment you can get from us. We're working hard to make sure we meet all the deadlines, get the money in, and get it out to the communities. So you got our commitment to work, to working hard to make sure that happens.
Yeah, mahalo. That's a good note to end on. And I will thank you all for being a part of the 201st Broadband Hui call. Riley, I see you smiling, so I'm glad you were part of this. And I'll give it over to Shola to kind of close this out and prepare us for the next one.
Alrighty, everyone. Mahalo nui for joining us today for the 201st meeting of the Broadband Hui. We will see you all next week. Stay safe and stay awesome. Mahalo nui, everyone.
Aloha. Thanks, everybody.